0, 1, 2, 3.
So in today's video, we're going to be taking it back to the thing that brought most of you to my channel in the first place, and that is 3D printed Form 1 suppressors. Now, if you've been here for a while, a lot of this is going to sound familiar already, and that's because I made 2 videos previous to this one on the same subject, but they're no longer on YouTube because they were a little too close to being tutorials, and YouTube doesn't like that type of thing. However, those videos are still available on my Rumble channel for all the people out there wondering, because I got a ton of messages and comments and even some emails asking where those videos went now that they're not on YouTube anymore. So if you're looking for them, just head over to Rumble. This video is essentially going to be a sterilized version made to be YouTube friendly, so this is not a tutorial. What you see in front of me is an FTN4. It is a printed plastic core made by one of the machines you see behind me, and it has been wrapped in carbon fiber. Now, most people don't even know that these exist, let alone that they are completely legal. It's a similar process to buying a suppressor from the store, except instead of getting a Form 4 from the ATF, you're getting a Form 1. And then, of course, you just pay the $200 tax stamp. If you were looking for a video, by the way, on how to file a Form 1, I have a step-by-step video here on the channel that walks you through the entire process, so you can go check that out after you're done here. It makes it extremely easy. The hardest part is just paying the government for your rights. The next question that people usually have when they find out that these exist is, aren't they going to explode, or isn't the plastic going to melt? And the answer to both of those is mostly no. I say mostly because user error exists and these are homemade. But let me just show you. Here's footage of me at the range with this exact suppressor attached to my P90. I do a continuous string of fire of 50 rounds. So as you can see, the plastic didn't melt and the suppressor didn't explode. It also provided very good suppression. Now, before I get too far into the video, I just want to take a second and say that if you like this content or if you like my channel, please like and subscribe and turn on notifications so that you can see more content like this when it's uploaded. If you want to support my channel directly, please consider joining my Patreon or becoming a channel member here on YouTube, which gives you access to a members-only Discord. And last but not least, if you want to find any of the files that I talk about on this channel, they're available publicly on my Patreon. You don't even have to be a free member because I didn't make these things, so I'm obviously not going to charge for links. So now back to the suppressors. This particular model is an FTN4. It was designed by a very talented member of the 3D2A community known as PLA Boy, or Playboy, however you want to say it. The FTN series of 3D printed suppressors basically changed the game for people making these things at home, because up until that point, all the suppressors that existed relied entirely on the 3D printed plastic for their strength, with the one exception that I can think of being the Hush Puppy, which was a comically large suppressor that utilized threaded rod running through the body in order to sandwich the layers and provide more support. So Before the FTN was created, it was almost unheard of for people to register their 3D printed suppressors because they would only last a few dozen or maybe 100 rounds before they would fail. Also, I've tried to go back and find the first example of someone making a suppressor with a 3D printer, and it's basically impossible to find who did it first. But there are examples going back a decade or more, so it's been a long time. There's one company that claims to have been the first to create 3D printed suppressors, and that's an outright lie. So don't believe anybody who makes that claim because it's genuinely impossible to know who did it first. And also, don't ever pay a company for these types of files because it's an absolute waste of money. The FTN series is objectively the most durable and has become a very popular option for people looking to go the route of getting a Form 1. And these files are completely free, so don't get scammed. Now, there are definitely good unreinforced designs out there, especially for smaller calibers. An unreinforced design can certainly be viable. For instance, if you just want to suppress 22, you can absolutely get away without reinforcement. In this video, however, I'm more focused on the FTN series because if you're going to pay a $200 tax stamp, you want a suppressor that's going to last a long time and also be serviceable so that you can rebuild it when that time comes. And that leads me into the next most common question that people have about these types of suppressors. How long do they last? And what do I do once they're worn out? Am I just out of a tax stamp? So the answer to this question is a little bit complicated and non-standard, but I'm going to do my best to simplify it. So how long your suppressor lasts will be dependent on a variety of factors, but the most important of which are the material you use to make it, the caliber being used with the suppressor, and the barrel length of the weapon. So for instance, if you're shooting 5.56 through a 16-inch barrel, which is, one of the more common setups out there, you can probably expect to start losing suppression at 1,000 rounds or less using something like PLA+. It's worth noting that in the beta group, there were reports of people getting upwards of 2,000 rounds, but notably, it was with a 20-inch barrel, so it makes a pretty big difference. Now, obviously, 5.56 is a more aggressive round that's going to wear a suppressor out more quickly. But if you were to only shoot 9mm and 45 through your suppressor, you could easily get thousands of rounds before you start to lose suppression. And when I say lose suppression, I'm referring to the fact that as you shoot, the plastic bore will expand slowly over time. And so the bigger it gets, the less effective it will be at suppressing the weapon. But if you're only using 22, realistically, you could probably get 10,000 rounds out of an FTN because 22 is just not going to be wearing these things out the same. Anecdotally, I had one person in my comment section mention that he printed a suppressor out of either PPA or PPSCF, and he had at least 3,000 rounds of 300 blackout, and it was still going. I don't know how many of those were subsonic versus supersonic, so as you can see, the longevity is going to really depend on a lot of things, but the answer to the question of how long they're going to last is pretty long, considering it's a plastic core. If you're thinking about making one of these to get a Form 1, then you might want to invest in the best material that your printer can handle. Now, the second part of the question was, what do I do once the core is worn out? Is it serviceable? And the answer is yes. As long as you make yours with the metal tube as described in the README that comes with the files, you can press your old core out and have a new core printed and installed. As I mentioned in the beginning of this video, I used a carbon fiber sleeve for mine. So in my case, once my core wears out, this suppressor is not serviceable legally speaking. I chose to go with the carbon fiber sleeve just because it ends up giving the highest possible strength while also being the lightest possible option. And I just want to clarify here that this is not a carbon fiber tube. The pre-made carbon fiber tubes are an option, but this is an actual carbon fiber biaxial sleeve that I epoxied myself. Another thing that's very interesting about this particular type of suppressor is that it does not get hot the same way that a metal suppressor does. Whereas metal is a good conductor of heat and can end up getting red hot after a long string of fire, these plastic suppressors are terrible conductors of heat, and even after being shot continuously, never get anywhere near as hot as a metal suppressor does. You probably noticed in the range footage at the beginning that after firing those 50 rounds, I'm able to immediately grab the suppressor with no issue. If you did that with a metal suppressor, you would almost certainly get burned. So now let's talk about how they attach to the weapon, because there are many different options. On the attachment side of the suppressor, get it centered, you'll have one of a few different options installed. Mine has a Breek Castle blast shield. It's held in place by 2 high-speed steel rods. Breek Arms is a company that makes various firearms accessories. So in the same way that you'd buy a suppressor with your specific mounting option, when you make one yourself, you can choose a specific mounting option. So there's the Breek Castle Blast Shield like I've got in mine, and then there's another one that is from a company called KAK or CAC. And then, well, and there's more than that, but those are just the ones I'm thinking off the top of my head. And then on the weapon itself, as you can see here, you'll have some sort of muzzle device. So in my case, I have a Breek muzzle brake, and it just kind of acts like a quick connect option. Like I said, there's other options in the files if you don't want to go with these. I just went with Breek because they're cheap and they work really well. Here I have a cutaway of a suppressor, and you can see what the internal geometry looks like, as well as this front area where, in my case, the blast shield goes. Now, these muzzle devices also serve to strengthen the attachment point, because if you were to just directly thread the plastic onto the end of a barrel that gets super hot as you're shooting, it's gonna melt the plastic very quickly, and then it's gonna droop, and then you're gonna end up with a baffle strike, and it's just gonna be a bad day. So now that we've talked about all that, let's cut to some more range footage real quick so that you can get an idea of what these suppressors sound like attached to various calibers. Now, one thing to mention is that in those clips, I'm either recording on a cell phone or with the stock microphone in my camera, so it's not exactly the best representation of performance, but I do own regular metal suppressors, like this Griffin Armament. This is the Paladin HD in 30 cal. So I can tell you, again, anecdotally, how they sound to me in comparison, and honestly, they're very close. Obviously, when I'm at the range, I'm wearing hearing protection and I don't have the kind of equipment to give my specific numbers, you know, decibel readings or whatever, but I can say with certainty that the performance is very close to a metal suppressor, and I'm very happy with how they work. Before we get into the last part of the video, I just want to mention I have multiple videos on the channel that go more in depth on various aspects of this topic. So when you get done here, you should go check those out. I talk about like filament selection and also how to make your baffles last longer and that kind of thing. Now to wrap things up, I just want to cover very quickly the important things to consider if you decide to go down the route of getting a Form 1 and venturing into the world of 3D printed suppressors. First and foremost is obviously get the Form 1 first before you do anything. It's not cheap, but it's easy and it covers you legally. Number 2 would be read the README. Almost every file in the 3D 2A space comes with a README, but for some reason people often choose to ignore it. Playboy worked very hard on his README, and it provides all of the information you could ever need to put one of these things together. So if you're gonna do anything, read the README. I also want to take a second to mention material choice, because I haven't talked about that yet, and I have a separate video on it also, but as with all things in the 3D 2A side of printing, PLA Plus is the minimum, and obviously never print with anything less than 100% infill. With all that being said, if you have any questions, I'm sure I forgot something, let me know down in the comment section and I'll be happy to answer them. And one last shameless plug on the way out. If you like this video, please like and subscribe, turn on notifications so you can see whenever I upload new content. Also, please consider joining my Patreon or becoming a channel member to support the channel directly and to get access to the members only Discord. Again, links to all the files are available publicly on my Patreon for free, and I'll see you guys in the next one.